This conference agrees that UK beer lovers have been badly let down by the lack of leadership and imagination shown by the multinational brewers and the large property firms that, between them, control the UK beer trade. Conference therefore instructs the National Executive to ensure that all relevant CAMRA publications and communications pledge preferential support to beer producers and suppliers that are independent of the influence of the multinational brewers, and to make the case persistently for this stance. It's being proposed by Real Ale, Cider and Perry campaigns, with Tim Webb to propose.
Tim Webb, Exeter and East Devon branch, and chair of the Real Ale, Cider and Perry campaigns committee. I've also got a rival cough with Dean's. It's been going on 2.5 weeks in my case. I really hope it doesn't start in just a moment. Anyway, this simple idea is fundamental to how we do what we do. You might think it should have been policy for the last 50 years, but it has not been. I'm going to talk about independent brewers, and the seconder of the motion, Julian Hoff, will talk about independent beer sellers. Why are multinational brewers bad for beer lovers? It actually began in the late 1950s, early 1960s, when the then leaders of the UK brewing industry decided amongst themselves that beer was going to be turned into a commodity. They created big brands, which were cheap to make. They were simple, they were nice looking, they were see-through, they were frothy topped, and they would sell them at a high premium, marketing them directly to regular blokes. Now, unfortunately, at more or less the same time, the then leaders of the European wine industry decided to do something almost exactly the opposite. They would tidy up some of the problems with the quality of wine, but they would then, instead of trying to go for uniformity, they would go for diversity. They took wine and they concentrated on what was the grape, what was the region, what was the style. And they majored on individuality, and they marketed these to the emerging hopeful generations of post-war Europe and whose children, the baby boomers, were learning to play with each other around the swimming pools of Mediterranean hotels. Wine was going to be the affordable treat for the new generations. And lo and behold, wine sales in the UK trebled during the 1970s, though beer sales also rose during the same period, not as much. Wine sales then trebled again in the next 20 years, and this time it was at the expense of beer. Since 1980, beer consumption in the UK has halved, despite the overall rise in alcohol consumption. In 2023, the last year for which there are figures, beer production in the UK fell 8%. 8% in 1 year. In 2024, it almost certainly fell again, but we don't have those figures officially yet. When CAMRA was founded, beer drunk in pubs made up 60% of all the alcohol consumed in the UK. In 2025, if we are lucky, beer consumed in pubs will make up 15% of all the alcohol drunk in the UK, a fall of 3/4 on our watch. Nowadays, the large UK brewers are all foreign-owned. They have no national affinity with British beer styles of any sort, and it's most obvious with cask. AB InBev and Heineken produce no cask beer. Carlsberg slashed 8 brands early this year. Molson Coors has one market leader, Doombar. It is tanking at the moment, and they have no replacement on the horizon. The multinational brewers are bad news for beer lovers because they have not realized that their actual model of practice, going for bigger, bolder, shinier, doesn't work. And they're not going to change in that. Their green energy powered super dray is pointing in the wrong direction, and it has other design flaws. It has no brake, no steering wheel, no reverse gear, and no sat-nav. In simple terms, Large brewers are, for the discerning beer drinker, a waste of space, whether that's bar space or shelf space. It is in the independent brewers that you find the special beers, the memorable beers, the local beers, the diverse styles of beer that people like us are looking
finish
for.
Up, Tim.
Where do you want me to go to? Yeah, we'll do the punchline. The punchline is, it is not CAMRA's role to stand up for independent brewers and to get them to have a fair access to the market. It is our duty, and it is our duty to consumers, and we should make this point time and again whenever we can and stick to it. Please support this motion.
Jill, you're going to second it? You'd like to speak?
Yes,
Yep.
I'd like to speak. Good afternoon, conference. Gillian Huff. I'm the director responsible for, this is the nice Gillian now. Gillian Huff, director responsible for the Real Ale, Cider and Perry Campaigns Committee and Derby branch member. Conference. The CAMRA committee proposing this motion is responsible for the campaign's strategic and campaigning approach to beer, cider and perry. This motion deals only with beer, but it is not limited to the brewers. It also deals with the supply side. Roughly 45% of beer in the UK is sold via the on-trade. And it is important that we offer differential support to pubs and clubs that are able to sell beer from independent breweries. With 45% of the beer in the UK being sold by the on-trade, then that means the majority, i.e. roughly 55% of beer that is sold in the UK is in the off-trade. The off-trade is dominated by supermarkets and off-licensed chains, but also includes some remarkable independent beer stores that are the backbone of beer choice for consumers in many parts of the country. It is important that we offer our support to these shops because it is here that the concerned consumer can find the best beers. On a more basic level, the customers of independent beer shops and stores could find a rich seam of natural CAMRA supporters. These are people who like beer enough to seek out the good ones. These are people who run businesses that they often have a sort of independent spirit. And if the relationships are handled well, they could be a great source of membership recruitment, or maybe even advertising for magazines. A quick word about an area of the beer business where our knowledge is still limited: the beer wholesalers. These are companies that sell beer to the on-trade and the off-trade, many of which are wary of stocking beers from independent breweries, but some of which will thrive on stocking beers that are less well known. There is work for us to do here. Finally, wherever you look in the UK, the UK beer trade, the same pattern exists. Companies in premises are obligated in different ways to large multinational brewers, while the independent brewers that make, arguably, the most interesting beers are being squeezed out. Now, I know that not all independent companies are angels, but it is within the independent sector that the concerned beer drinker will find their favourite suppliers. Please support the independents and support this motion. Thank you.
Do I have anyone who wishes to speak against the motion? Oh, yeah, I'm getting one at the back. Ellie's helping me out. Where are we going? Okay, no, there we go. You stood up. I see you. Yeah, come on down.
Mark Bravery, South West London branch, with some reluctance to oppose the motion. I think it's basically well-intentioned. I just think it's victim to oversimplification. The motion calls for preferential support for independent producers over multinationals. Where does that leave, I ask, draft Bass, still regarded by many of our members as one of the finest cask ales produced in this country? The rights to 𝗪𝗲𝗃 are still owned, I believe, by AB InBev. It's now brewed at the former Marston's Brewery, now owned by Carlsberg, of course, a multinational. Should we not be encouraging Carlsberg to continue or ensure that 𝗪𝗃𝗃 is still brewed? If this motion were passed, we give preferential support to somebody who puts out a muddy brown beer fermented in a garage, give that preferential support over 𝗪𝗃𝗃. There are other beers I could mention that are still brewed by multinationals: Marston's Pedigree, Fuller's ESB, Dark Star Hophead. I would contend that the spirit behind this motion is in fact already embraced by CAMRA, if not the letter of the motion. I would therefore ask for this motion to be remitted to the NE. If it's not remitted, then I would, with some reluctance, ask you to oppose it. Thank you.
Do I have anyone who wishes to speak in favour of the motion? Oh, yeah, Roger. Sorry, can I just check on the last moment there? Was that a request for remittance?
Okay. Fellow members, the global brewers are destroying not just beer, but our brewing heritage. Heineken closed the Caledonian Brewery, a listed building, for goodness sake, with the famous direct flame coppers. Carlsberg have gone raving mad, closed Jennings, although that's going to be saved, thank goodness. Banks's Brewery in Wolverhampton, annual production 100,000 barrels a year. Wychwood closed, Ringwood closed. You all know from the publicity that Carlsberg have dumped the Burton Union system. Some years ago, I went to those amazing rooms packed with lovely oak vessels developed in the 19th century to produce sparkling pale ale. I described them as the cathedrals of brewing, which Marston's rather liked. They used that description. Welcome to the cathedrals of brewing. Carlsberg have disposed of them. They've given a tiny proportion to Thornbridge, a tiny proportion to a brewery in Glasgow, but the rest have been dumped. And now I discover, because I asked the question, what happened to the Breakspear double drop fermenters in Henley-on-Thames? When Breakspear closed, those fermenters were moved to Wychwood. I asked Carlsberg, who after a very long pause came back and said they've been disposed of. Now, those double drop fermenters were quite amazing. They were fermenters on 2 stories. After 15 days of fermentation, the liquid was literally dropped from the top floor to the 2nd floor, leaving behind dead yeast and unwanted protein to allow a cleaner fermentation to continue. They've been dumped, dropped on the scrap heap. This is what these people are doing to destroy the history and the heritage of brewing in this country. The answer, I think, is that we have to press the government to give breweries, independent breweries, particularly the 30 remaining family breweries, protected status. The French would not allow this to happen to their wine industry. The Germans would not allow this to happen to their brewing industry. We have to demand the government does something to protect our brewing heritage.
Do we have any speakers against the motion? Shelley?
Hello, conference. Shelley Bentley from Wolverhampton branch. Find it a very confusing issue. Yes, I think the majority of us already vote with our feet and support independent brewers where we can. I'm a little concerned if we're doing it across all our communications and publications, that we might send out a slightly misguided message to all our membership, because a lot of our memberships take very, very literally what we say. And to some extent, I think it can go the wrong way, that we don't want it to go, that then our members will actually boycott pubs that belong to these big brewery chains. A lot of the landlords and landladies of these pubs have not got the choice to leave their jobs and leave their businesses. It's their homes, it's their businesses. I think our message could be misconstrued and people will start boycotting those pubs and we could lose those pubs because of our actions. It just worries me the way things go on. I'm not 100% sure that our actions over fresh ale and the way that was handled didn't go forward and sort of be part of the problem that ended up with Banksy's closing. And I am from Wolverhampton and I'm heartbroken by what's happened. But I am worried if we go down a certain path, we could start adding to the problem and not be part of the solution. We could be causing pubs to close. We have to think about very carefully how we word these things if we go ahead with them. And I would also ask that this is remitted.
Thank you very much. Just a reminder from Royce when he came and spoke to me before, requests for remittance or motions for remittance have to be done separately. So whilst that we've had a speech against, it has to come separately just for the rules. Is there anyone who'd like to speak for the motion? I've got it in the back. Come on down.
Right, Elaine Cheney, Branch Consort, Coventry and District Branch. It strikes me that there's more than one way to skin a cat, and the critical thing for me in this motion is that it's all relevant communications. So it doesn't mean that we stop talking in other ways. It's just that if, in a particular circumstance, it is relevant to put our cards on the table and say that we are for independence, that doesn't mean that we stop talking to big companies about BAS and the things. You can find ways to keep talking without losing your general passion for the real thing, which is independent, small businesses and what's right. Thank you.
Would anybody like to speak against the motion? Not seeing any hands. We've already had our second. Oh, wait, Shelley? Okay, and we just go straight into it, don't we, on that? Okay, so, yeah, Tim, you have the opportunity to speak against remittance now for a minute.
2 reasons for non-remittance. First is, if it's remitted, it comes to my committee and it'll get the same response back. The second is, and I'll put this bluntly, if we haven't learned after 50 years that the only decent beer comes from independent brewers, we're not going to learn it. The direction of travel of large breweries is very clear. We just haven't discerned it. If there are still people who are not yet victims of them, they will be in the future. So please don't remit it. Let's just get on with this and say this is where we are lending our support. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to the vote on remittance. All those in favour of remitting the motion to the National Executive, raise your hand. Those against? The debate will, well, the debate won't continue. Now we'll go to a vote on the motion, because that's where we were going. Okay, back to motion 3. So yes, go straight to the vote. So all those in favour of motion 3, please raise your hand. Those against? Motion is carried.